Let the record reflect we have reconvened with all members present. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a motion for the reorganization minutes of January 1st, 2016.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Wolkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
And a motion for the executive minutes of January 11th, 2016.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Wolkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
And finally, regular minutes of January 11th, 2016.
So moved.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Wolkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Welcome all, and thank you for all coming out and finding a parking spot in between the piles of snow out there. A couple of announcements, and then I've got a couple of presentations to do. This Sunday, the library will feature a presentation on visual literacy in the digital photography era, presented by Jim Del Giudice. The program begins at 2 p.m. at the library's Chase Auditorium, and the program complements Jim's current exhibit that is going on right now. Local residents are reminded that each week the library features Tech Tuesday. If you're having trouble with your tablet, phone, or mobile device, the library technology assistant will help you figure it out. Appointments are available from 11:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. by calling 973-377-0722. And then winter is a great time for catching up on your reading, especially in the middle of a snowstorm. The library is now featuring Fresh Picks e-newsletter. Sign up to the library's website, which is madisonnjlibrary.org. The e-newsletter will arrive every Monday in your inbox and let you know some of the latest fiction and nonfiction titles available at the library. A few other announcements. I was able to attend the Martin Luther King service at the First Baptist Church, which was co-hosted by Beth AME, and I want to also thank Chief Datchison and several of our police officers for attending that event. It's great to see the partnerships and the great service and recognizing not only the life and work of Martin Luther King, but his dream that still goes on and someday will be delivered to all of us. Earlier tonight at 6 o'clock was a presentation by our engineer Bob Vogel on the road program for 2016. Included in that are Cross and Cottage, Kinney and West, Crescent, Lawanaga Terrace, and also a look at Prospect, as we'll be looking for some state funding for that one. And of course, you can't have announcements right now without a little talk about the snowstorm that and probably a little comment about the job of weather forecaster. It was a year ago today that we were looking at the forecast for the storm of the century that headed off to the east and devastated Long Island and then New England. And then coming into this past weekend, we were looking at maybe 3 to 5 inches as the storm would be tracking to the east and be much tougher in blizzard conditions New York City and Long Island. As we know now, it was far different than that. And in fact, at a post that I saw on the Facebook showed at 10:10, as a quote was, this is from the Weather Channel, flakes are still flying in New Jersey, where the top snowfall total in the state is now Madison with 29 inches. So as I posted after that, it's nice to see us on mentioning at Weather Channel, but in my mind, snow news is not good news. So sorry, I couldn't resist that one. It worked better. The staff met earlier today to review the response to the storm. I've got to say that everyone should be commended for a great effort and during the storm and all that people heeded the warnings, stayed off the roads. Our police chief reported that there were no weather-related accidents, which is great to hear, because it certainly could have been devastating to have people out there. I put out a request for volunteers to help seniors with shoveling, and I had a whole host of people volunteer and a list of seniors that needed the shoveling. I'm trying to pull up the list of my volunteers here. And just a few of the people that helped out: the Geheen family, Scheer family, Watson, Morgan, Barty, Hughes, Matthews, Amiva, Hayrich, Rocco, all helping shovel out the seniors without taking a second guess at saying, well, I was in it for 15 inches, I was not in it for the second 15 inches. They were out there shoveling all 30 inches of it. And we may have more reports from our liaisons as far as other things going on, but a reminder that the 30 inches came over 24 hours, it doesn't disappear that fast, so it's going to take a while to get it all cleared up. The priority was clearing and widening around the schools, and over the next couple of nights we'll see downtown get cleared so our parking is restored, and then they'll go back out and start widening more of the streets. So until then, please exercise extreme caution as you park and drive, because it's going to be a while before we can fully recover. Okay, Finance and Borough Clerk. Actually, we're in this order anyway. Mr. Landrigan.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
We got to
right.
get the new order here. Sorry.
New order? Okay.
We'll work our. I'm sorry. We'll hold off. We'll work our way around the table as we. Utilities. Mr. Wolkowitz.
Thank you, Mayor. Talking about the storm, the Water Department had the misfortune of having to deal with a break Saturday afternoon at 4 p.m. This was at Troy Court. The men on the job worked right through the storm and fixed the break. So kudos to them. That was no easy deal, I'm sure. As far as the electrical department's concerned, repairs are continuing on the damaged duct at James Park, and the appropriate parts have been ordered. And as soon as they arrive, they'll be installed, and that bank will be back in operation. I want to point out one thing, that no one should be concerned that with us being in effect out of half a transformer, that the town is vulnerable. I think the best indication of that was this last weekend, when there were no outages, there were no calls, everything worked just fine. And in fact, we currently are sitting with more backup than we had with Sandy. So it's not a terrible thing. Obviously, it would be better if we had them both online, and we will shortly, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows that we're not sitting here a step away from going into darkness. It's the exact opposite of that. The electric department also installed 2 new lamp posts and some fixtures in Waverly Green parking lot. They did a pole transfer on Central Avenue. They did some streetlight repairs and service upgrades. So they've been rather busy. And that's it for me.
Thank you. And we will go through reports, but then I have some presentations to do, so I know some people in the audience for the presentations. Health, Mr. Catanello.
Thank you, Mayor. The Zika virus. The CDC has issued a travel alert for people traveling to regions and certain countries where the Zika virus transmission is ongoing. Brazil, Colombia, El Salvador, French Guiana, Guatemala, Haiti, Honduras, Martinique, Mexico, Panama, Paraguay, Suriname, Venezuela, and Puerto Rico. There is currently limited information on this virus, but additional research is being conducted. Sadly enough, my assistant at work is half from her father's family's from Martinique, and her grandmother died last year from the Zika virus. So it is real. It's not one of those things they just talk about. You don't know anyone who actually gets it. Aurora's grandmother did. It was very sad. Until more is known and out of an abundance of caution, the CDC recommends special precautions for pregnant women and women trying to become pregnant. Because specific areas where Zika virus transmission is ongoing are difficult to determine and likely to change over time, CDC will update this travel notice as information becomes available. If you're planning to travel, please check the CDC website. Unfortunately, there's no vaccine to prevent or medicine to treat Zika. 4 in 5 people who acquire Zika infection may have no symptoms. Illness from Zika is usually mild and does not require hospitalization. Travelers are strongly urged to protect themselves by preventing mosquito bites. Good luck at that when you're in the tropics. In addition to steps announced today, the CDC is working with public health experts across the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to take additional steps related to Zika. CDC is developing an interim guidance for pregnant women, as well as sharing additional information about Zika with public health officials, clinicians, and the public. In addition, efforts are underway across HHS to develop vaccines, improve diagnostics, and other countermeasures. For additional information, please check the CDC website, consult your physician, and the Madison Health Department. As for our health department clinics and activities, the upcoming Child Health and Immunization Clinic, scheduled for February 16th at 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. The clinic was moved to late afternoon to make it easier for parents to attend, and it's open to all residents of all contacted towns. Audits for compliance to New Jersey immunization rules continue in all Madison Health Department jurisdictions, public and private schools, preschool and child care. In New Jersey, only medical or religious exemptions are accepted, and the weekly flu report shows moderate activity at this time in our area. Vaccine is still available at the Madison Health Department. CDC recommends vaccinations at any time during the influenza season, which ends in New Jersey on March 31st. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Finance and Borough Clerk, Mr. Landrigan.
All righty, thank you, Mayor. In regards to payroll, salary increases were given to all employees and all unions as per the collective bargaining agreements. Every employee who receives health insurance saw an increase in their contribution effective 1/1/16. The new payroll software that I reported on at the last meeting has been implemented by Linda and Sandy. The system will enable the borough to manage each employee's vacation, sick, and personal time electronically rather than doing it manually, which will save us time and improve accuracy. In regards to finance, our Chief Financial Officer has been working on the borough's annual debt statement. This document is mandated by state statute, and it compares the borough's total net debt, including school debt, to property values in the town. The state uses this document to monitor municipalities. Madison is in an excellent debt position and financial position, as proven by our AAA bond rating from Standard & Poor's. On Friday, January 15th, the borough paid back the last $80,000 payment for the special emergency note that paid for the revaluation. The state allows municipalities to borrow short-term for special situations, including revaluations, preparation of tax maps, codification of ordinances, and the like. Also on Friday, January 15th, the borough wired $3.1 million to the Board of Education, which represents their monthly portion of property taxes. This past week, the borough's purchasing system was successfully closed out and prepared for 2016. Special thanks to Linda Sawyer and Kevin O'Keefe for their help in making this happen. In regards to the budget, we have talked about capital in previous council meetings, and tonight we will discuss the Open Space Trust Fund. Councilwoman Astrid Bailey will discuss the list of possible projects, and Jim is here to report on the trust fund activity for 2015. We have a special meeting scheduled for Monday evening, 1 week from today, where the utility budget and municipal budget will be presented. Staff from the utilities will be on hand to answer any questions. The following week, during our regularly scheduled council meeting on February 8th, we will review various department budgets, including police, fire, public works, library, health, construction, and engineering. The department heads will be here to answer questions and report on goals and accomplishments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Public Safety, Ms. Vitale.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a report from the Fire Department. On Monday evening, January 18th, 21 Madison firefighters went to 3 Keep Street to train in an unoccupied house that was slated to be demolished. Although temperatures were in the low 20s, valuable skills were practiced and new techniques were learned. The house was donated by Florenza Construction, LLC of East Hanover. Homes that are set for demolition are priceless for firefighter training. Anyone with a house that has to be demolished and would like to donate it for training is asked to contact Fire Chief Lou DeRosa. On January 21st and 22nd, members of the Madison Fire Department Confined Space Rescue Team did a site visit to Colgate Palmolive in Morris Township along with members of the Morris Township Fire Department to familiarize themselves with the areas of permit-required confined spaces that they may have to respond to for a rescue. During the recent blizzard, Madison firefighters manned fire headquarters with additional career and volunteer personnel. Firefighters are responsible to keep the public safety complex clear of snow and accessible during and after the snowstorms. During the blizzard, firefighters responded to 9 calls for assistance, 1 call for odor of something burning in a home, 1 call for a person stuck in an elevator at the train station, which is scary, and that person was safely removed, though. 3 CO alarm activations due to clogged furnace vents caused by drifting snow, 1 natural gas odor in a home. 3 medical calls from with Madison Volunteer Ambulance Corps to assist them in gaining access to houses by opening up the street, driveway, and/or walkway. Firefighters are now focused on clearing the nearly 800 fire hydrants of snow. Many residents have cleared hydrants in their neighborhood, but many more are buried and inaccessible. The Madison Fire Department would like to thank those who have already cleared a hydrant and would also like to ask for the public's assistance in clearing a patch from the road to the hydrant and to clear 3 feet around the hydrant. Thank you for all your support, and it's from Chief Lou DeRosa. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Community Affairs, Ms. Bailey.
Mayor, the Downtown Development Commission and the Chamber of Commerce want to remind you to save the date, Monday, March 7th, for Taste of Madison. You can purchase tickets at Gary's Wine and Liquors. And then the Senior Center wants to announce that they've begun the 2016 season with a focus on age-friendly communities. And we are grateful to Mayor Conley for attending the January 14th Senior Citizens Advisory Committee meeting to read and sign the Best Cities for Successful Aging pledge. The pledge promotes a safe, supportive, active, and healthy environment for seniors. Support for the pledge will come from the Grata Fund grant recently awarded to the Madison Health Department, which will help identify needs and define existing assets. The Senior Citizens Advisory Committee formed a subcommittee headed by Dr. Sandra Fiello, a gerontological nurse who is active in the community with health-based related programs. And the group's first meeting will be on February 4th, and they're going to focus on the goals and the content of the draft survey. And the Montclair State University Center for Research and Evaluation on Education and Human Services, also known as CREES, is going to be the borough's consultant. They're going to prepare the survey upon the advice and the review of the advisory committee. CREES is a successful participant in the Age-Friendly Communities program, and Montclair is one of 2 New Jersey communities designated age-friendly by the World Health Organization. And this survey, although it's you complete it online, we will have paper copies, and we will hopefully have volunteers who will man computers at certain hours, perhaps in the library, perhaps at the senior center, and perhaps at our senior housing. That's all to be determined, but they're trying to get volunteers to help to enter the online data. The survey will be 8 to 10 questions. So that news will be coming out on that as they progress. For the Recreation Advisory Committee, we have since January 27th, 2015, over 475 coaches have submitted their information and had their background checks approved. Spring sports registrations are now open, with the exception of track and field, which will be opening in early February. All registration processes are conducted through the recreation page of Rosenet. The anticipated enrollment for the spring sports is as follows. Madison Little League, 650 participants. Madison Girls Softball, 320 participants. Boys Lacrosse, 270. Girls Lacrosse, 220, and Track and Field, 150. The rec department also wants to announce they had their first successful ski club trip to Mount Peter for the 5th through 8th grade program on Friday, January 15th. We had over 190 children enrolled this year, along with 20 chaperones. There are 5 more trips scheduled, one on January 29th, February 5th, February 12th, February 19th, and February 26th. The Madison Basketball Association is midway through its season and has 19 travel teams participating in the Jersey Basketball Association. The enrollment is just under 650 children. Enrollment for wrestling and hockey are at about 70 and 130, respectively. The Rosedale skating rink officially opened for the first time on Wednesday, January 20th. Updates on rink status are now posted on the recreation page of Rosenet. Revenue generated from field rentals in 2015 totaled $28,800. And again, the Borough will be offering a multitude of camps and clinics through U.S. Sports Institute, and information will be coming soon, again, through the recreation page of Rosenet. And that is it, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, and Public Works and Engineering, Mr. Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to offer my thanks to the borough staff for all the hard work they did this past few days on the snowstorm. In addition to what you already noted, they've completed the work on Waverly Place, widening the road and clearing the crosswalks. After midnight, they'll be addressing Main Street and Lincoln Place. They've been bringing in private contractors to assist with moving the snow from the downtown area. So we're asking that people stay out of that area in terms of parking this evening so we can get full access and continue to expand the amount of parking available. In addition to that, we've also got a private vendor supplementing the fire department's efforts to clear the 750 fire hydrants in town. We encourage residents, if they're able, to help clear the hydrants on their street. From the engineering department for the roads, again, in addition to the note about the meeting that we attended earlier this evening, the reconstruction projects, we hope to be able to have the bids out in February for advertisements. The work on design, estimating, and bid documentation has been completed. The reconstruction of Prospect Street has also been advanced by Bowman Engineers, anticipating advertising after a state notification on funding. The Complete Streets Committee has scheduled a meeting on Wednesday, February 10th at 8 a.m. to further review the current road improvement proposals and discuss further improvement for multiple uses and traffic calming. And finally, for the library, the engineering and construction firm has entered into their punch list phase on the rooftop HVAC replacement contract. All of the units are functioning, providing heat to the library, although we are still tweaking the comfort levels in the building. Thank you very much.
Now I'm going to come down and do a couple presentations here. Earlier, we just approved the minutes from January 1st, and part of our January 1st tradition is to thank the volunteers who have served Madison on a committee or board for more than 5 years. And obviously, not all the volunteers can come here on New Year's Day, so we try to catch them when we can get them here, even if it's a couple of days after a snowstorm. So we've got 2 volunteers in the audience to get their medallion, and it truly is what makes this town go is volunteerism, whether it's serving on a committee or shoveling the sidewalks for our seniors. So we greatly appreciate all the work. And in the third row, I see that big smile from Flo Rice, who is retired recently from the health department and had served on the senior advisory committee from 2005 to 2015, so all inclusive, that's 11 years. So thank you so much, Flo, for your work. And this next one is very special because Serving on the planning board is truly a calling and takes a lot of dedication, and it's not just the meetings, it's all the work in between. 1 year can seem like 20, so 20 years will seem like, do the math, 400. Thank you. Tom Johnson, please come up here. Tom has not only served on the planning board for 20 years, but also served as chair for many of those years, has served as vice chair, and it was some negotiating that I finally squeezed one more year out of him, and it was the, it's always tough to leave a project midway, because if you say, I'm going to stay on just for this thing, the next thing comes around. But Tom said, well, I want to see the Green Village Road School project move through approvals. He worked so many years on that whole redevelopment project, so I was hoping he would forget the fact that I gave him that out, but he did remember, and so, Tom, thank you so much for your many years of dedication to the Borough of Madison. Communications and petitions.
None received, Mayor.
And now we're on to our first of two invitations for discussion. This is one that is limited to items on our agenda or resolutions are on the consent agenda. Remember that ordinances will have hearings, and that's when you can comment on those or wait until our next comment period. So items on our agenda discussion are the MRC note, the 2016 budget and open space, and the 2016 road program. If anyone wishes to comment on any of those items or any of the resolutions that are listed, please step up to the lectern. Seeing none, I close this part of the meeting. Excuse me. MRC note. Jim? Or
Step on that phone.
Thank you, Mayor. Probably best to meld or blend both the MRC note discussion and the Open Space Trust Fund discussion, since they're kind of interrelated, so I hope that's okay. But I'll start with the MRC note. The note that we have, bond anticipation note for $1.52 million, was settled by the borough in August. It's coming due February 10th. It's 1.52. There's about $4,449 in interest. So to retire the entire note, if we wanted to do that, it would be $1.524 million. And as you know, we received $1 million from the Board of Education for the sale of Green Village Road School, and we recently received $500,000 from Green Acres to go towards the MRC as well. So part of the reason for only doing a 6-month bond anticipation note was specifically for the possibility of this happening. Why continue and have this money sitting for 6 months, waiting for the note to roll over again in August? So with that, we're looking for consensus from the council or guidance from the council to say, yes, go ahead and pay down that entire note. Benefits are it reduces our interest rate risk, reduces our costs, and those are really, honestly, primarily the main reasons to do it. It's one of the reasons why we negotiated with the Board of Education for $1 million. So with that, we're looking for guidance on that. It makes sense to, you can certainly talk about it separately, or it makes sense to talk about it kind of in conjunction with the Open Space Trust Fund. And we can, I can entertain questions now just on the MRC note, or we can go into the Open Space Trust Fund discussion and talk about the finances there. And
maybe let's do the finances, because as you said, they're intertwined, and so then we can take the questions and discussion together if that's...
Bob, you have a question?
Yeah, I guess I have a question, maybe it'll bridge both. The $500,000, I understood the $1 million, that was always clearly earmarked for the note. The $500,000, is there anything else to which that could be applied?
Not easily. I mean, we could apply it to the principal of the long-term bond that we have. It would be sitting in our open space trust fund for a number of years. While we did that, we only have $145,000 in principal that gets paid each year on that long-term land side. So our bond counsel said it's really almost not the right thing to do to be sitting there having money over here and then rolling over a short-term note over here. So in terms of the specifics of the finances, there's a report that everyone received over the weekend. They have it at their table, and there's some up there if people want to grab some. But it's a summary of the finances in the open space trust fund, and I'll read from page 1. The balance at the beginning of the year was $315,000. The balance at the end of the year for the trust fund was just $63,000. There was a total of $976,000 in expenses, and total tax revenue that was raised of $622,000 and change. The total tax revenue in 2016 is estimated to be about the same, just a smidgen more because we have a little larger tax base due to some added and omitted tax assessments. As mentioned, the borough has a $1.52 million short-term bond anticipation note that's maturing in February, and alike. So it's good to review this kind of in total on a yearly basis. We do it on kind of on a quarterly basis. But if you flip to page 2, you'll see the primary inflows are the tax levy of $622,000, contributions that come in from the Madison Athletic Foundation, field rental and user fees and interest. And outflows are what you all vote on primarily. We have funds that went out for the Museum of Early Trades and Crafts. That was approved in Ordinance 10/2015. MRC Reforestation Project, Hartley Dodge Memorial East Wing Professional Services, Rosedale Skating Rink Project. We all saw that work being done late fall. Hartley Dodge East Wing Professional Services, Bailey Ellard Phase 2 remediation, MRC reciprocal easement common area maintenance fee. I think most people know what that is, but it's a mouthful. It's basically the maintenance of the road. That's a kind of a common space that we have with the owners of the property on the other side of the MRC. And as part of us acquiring that property, we entered into a common area maintenance agreement with them where we pay them a certain amount for plowing on years and maintenance of the road. On years when there's a lot of snow, we might have to pay a little more. On years where, and you can see that there's an annual true-up of $5,900 last year from all the snow. There's some other MRC fencing, conservation management plan, and the like. And then as I think everyone knows here, we pay all the short-term and long-term debt that's associated with the MRC and the MRC field project out of this. There's 2 semi-annual interest payments and then a principal payment that's done every year on the long term, and then the short term is the as I talked about before. So as it says here, there's $63,000 left at the end of the year, and going into this year, we'll raise $625,000. Field rentals, I think it's going to be higher. This past year was a little bit low because of funds that are going to be coming in for fall sports that get voted on in January, and we'll get them at that point in time. There is the annual payment of the long-term bond, which is outlined in here, and that's a significant amount. That's over $300,000 a year, $340,000 a year that's anticipated. So in the end, if you're getting in $700,000 and you're paying out $340,000, you really don't have that much left for projects. So I don't know if we want to have questions now, Mayor, if you want to have Austri talk about some of the projects, because Open Space has been discussing that.
I have one question.
Yep. Go ahead.
So in her council briefing today, Councilperson Bailey said that we raised $28,800 in field rentals, okay?
Carmel is cited
But
that.
if you look at the field rental and user fee total, it's only $50,960. It looks, are all the sports submitting the user fees that they raise? Because it seems
They
a
are
little
submitting
low.
them. They are submitting them, but this past year, we got them a little earlier in 2014. 2015, we're expecting a significant amount. Soccer's one of the biggest
16
ones.
you're talking- so
yeah,
soccer
sorry,
hasn't paid yet.
2016. So soccer for the fall hasn't paid in yet. A couple of the fall sports haven't paid in yet.
So you mean sports that happen, they still haven't paid?
The boards are going to be authorizing it this month.
I see. Thank you. And what do you think that'll bring in, roughly? give or take?
I'm estimating.
Another 20, 22
being on
grand,
the low
maybe?
side, I'm estimating 60,000 for next year in field rental and user fees, but, I'd say it's going to be upwards of 70,000.
Thank you.
Bob?
Yeah, and getting back to the original use of the $500,000, I mean, I'm looking at the interest that the bond on the turf field has accrued to date, and it's almost $175,000. So with interest rates going up, if you roll over bonds, it probably makes sense to avoid that exposure.
Correct, yes. It's, there's a principal amount that we have to pay every year on a bond anticipation note. You have to pay a certain amount of principal.
Yeah.
Even if you paid a whole boatload last year, it's like your mortgage. You just got to pay a certain amount
Right.
every year. So the $165,000 was the principal that was paid off, part of it being from the contributions received from the Madison Athletic Foundation, the other being that minimum $110,000 payment. And then you're right, $16,800 this year. This past year was paid in interest, and we're just going to continue to pay
Yeah, I was
interest.
just adding
Interest
up
rates
from
are
the
going
beginning
up,
of.
so
Yeah, I was just adding from the beginning of time, and it's at 175. So best to end that clock.
Okay.
any questions on finance?
Pat, any other? And then,
So I guess just boiling this down, if you look at this year, it appears as if the field rentals and user fees actually come in closer to, let's say, $75,000. We should be bringing in about a total of $700,000 for the year. And on the way out, we have $340, and I'm looking at this as an ongoing basis, not just this year. So it's really going to be $340, so it's going to be about $350, $360. So that still leaves us about $340,000 per year on average that is available for use by the Open Space Committee to recommend things to us.
Correct, and the
Okay.
principal payment on the long-term debt, it goes down a smidgen every year, but it's really a small amount.
It's
So
insignificant.
It's just a few thousand a year.
But there's only two things we're committed to, and that's the common area maintenance fee and the continued payment of the debt.
Correct, and then this
Okay.
evening, there's an ordinance on for the letter of interpretation for Memorial Park.
That's just for this year.
Sure, correct.
Okay.
any other questions? And then we can go to Austri for the,
Sure, we do have several other projects that we have been looking at. On Wednesday, the Recreation Advisory Committee began discussing a project that Chris Holland has brought before the Advisory Committee, that we really lack indoor athletic facilities. And so the mayor brought that to the attention of the Shared Services Committee, which is the Board of Education and the Borough. And the mayor has asked that Mr. Holland give some kind of cost estimate and design. And we've been in, obviously, conversations with Mrs. Ellis, head of the Board of Education. Then on this list is missing, which is an oversight, is the two remediation areas at the MRC. Eventually, we're going to get some recommendations as to how to remediate. And, once that's done, those sites can be used some capacity. So there's a question mark there as to what that cost will be, and I'm assuming the remediation costs will probably have to be covered by open space. And I think that's basically what was missing on this list that you received.
Pat?
So I guess the first question is for Matt, and that is, are there any limitations on the Open Space Fund actually paying for remediation of environmental issues at the MRC?
No, because I think the MRC, it was acquired through open space funds, so you can use open space funds as a corollary, because what you're really doing is you're studying the environmental issues at an open space site. So
Yeah. The second question, in terms of this indoor athletic facility, so I guess the first question is, has the Board of Ed looked at do they really have no additional capacity that we can utilize before we build another building? And then the second question, I guess, for Ashley is, I mean, where are we looking to site it, and what's the ballpark?
They have to look at the indoor capacity first. This is just
Yeah, it's,
very, very preliminary stages. And they're talking, because the Board of Education is now talking about improvements in their facilities. The Board of Education did say, there might be some room at the high school to do this.
Okay.
Continues to that.
But they would actually add on to the high school for this?
No, that, it's not there yet.
I think it is very, very early, and from the shared services it's hard to even talk about what the possibilities are if you don't understand what the scope is. And there certainly was the discussion of this would not be funded by the Borough and Board of Education alone, that a substantial fundraising effort, if it were to happen, would be needed.
Okay.
Right now, you've got 650 kids being represented by, people who are saying that there's no space right now. So we're trying to find alternatives, and this was thrown out. So we'll see what happens.
Okay. Thank you.
I think what we kind of got from the Board of Education actually is that it's our recreation teams that actually need the space.
Yeah.
So I think that it's probably going to come out of here. I mean, just my
I mean, I would hope before we start building more buildings, we've squeezed every drop out of every building that already exists
Right.
in the town. Okay.
Bob?
Astrid, on your list, one of the items which I'm noticing is the MRC reserve for turf field reskinning. Is there any plans to come up with an estimate of how much and when that'll be needed?
That's a good question. I would have to defer to the rec committee
All right.
to find out when they think that the timing's right on that.
Yeah, because I know early estimates, and these were early estimates, that could be north of $800,000, and we're probably within 5 to 7 years of it.
Yeah.
That's correct, Bob.
Rob?
So let's say, for the sake of argument, Jim, that a sport decides not to turn over user fees 1 year. What is the repercussion associated with that?
There is a space every year where the Borough Council basically appoints a particular organization to be the primary organization to serve the town of Madison for that particular sport. And in doing so, they kind of agree to abide by the rules and regulations, one of which is the user fees. If they don't do that, they basically
Forfeit time?
Forfeit field time. The ability to schedule it ahead of others, and other organizations that have paid can leapfrog them and take space.
Thank you.
Ben?
Austria, I was wondering, going forward, if there's any possibility, and I know it's early on, it's just a wish list, but any possibility of there being public-private partnerships to fund some of these things. The reason I ask that is, in the past, when we've talked about some of these projects, I've defended them because my feeling was they enhanced Madison as a place to live, and we were all beneficiaries of it. But in some cases, the use is very narrow, and although we are indeed beneficiaries of it, the extent to which we are is slight. And in those cases, and we can obviously talk about them when they come before the council for approval, but in those cases, it would be encouraging at the least to see that there be some financial participation by the direct users.
The committee took the language of the ordinance that established the Open Space Trust Fund, and the number one priority for recommending projects to the council is obviously if we can get some shared funding. For example, when Steve Stocker got the grants, grant was way greater than what the, and then the Museum of Early Trades and Crafts. Theirs is all based on, they're getting their grant from the Historic Preservation
And the hopes is the Hartley Dodge Plaza repairs would also be one of those that would be, that we would be getting multiples of what we put in.
And we're already talking about where could we get some grant money or some money for bleachers.
Good, okay.
So, but things like, obviously, the road milling and overlay, that's not going to happen. The proposal, the recommendation we made for the funding of the LOI tonight, and the work that needs to be done, that's not going to happen.
Okay, any other, Pat?
Yeah, so one quick thing, or two things actually. Do we know, I know the Museum of Early Trades and Crafts has $125,000 on here. They're somewhere along the path of a multi-phase project. Is this phase 2 or 3 or 4?
I think they're
This is the
third.
second one,
Is it a second round?
Yeah, because they, it's one last year.
But they got the first round of money
No,
3
I
years
think
ago.
it's I think this is the third.
Third round, I believe, yeah.
It started with 125, then it went down to 110, and it's up to 125 again.
Okay. So I guess my recommendation would be, or maybe thought is, it might be valuable, since if we're looking at, as I kind of estimated, about at least $300,000, probably $350,000 right now, if we're not going to change the rate of kind of available money. Has the Open Space Committee started to think about how they would slot these projects out the same way we do for the rest of the capital budget, so that?
Can't, because it's on the basis of timing,
In terms of?
in terms of how they come to us. It's really a first come, first serve thing, and
But it really shouldn't be. It should be, I mean, when we do our capital budgeting, it's on a priority basis. Bob Vogel looks at our roads and says, these 10 roads are the next one that are due, and, if we have the money in 1 year, we do it in 1 year. If not, we spread it over 2 years. It really shouldn't be who gets to you guys first and says, I'm here, ready to go. I mean, we should really have a full view of, like, when do we think these things should be slotted out if we have a certain amount of money available every year.
For example, Museum of Early Trades and Crafts has to occur now.
Mhm.
So you're right. There is some way of prioritizing, and it does kind of shake out that way. But this council approved the remediation of Bailey Eller last year, and so that money was set aside, but Bob couldn't get to the project.
Mhm.
So that money, and from last year, been used for something else? I mean, I don't know how to fix that
Well,
problem.
but it's already set aside. It's going to get done.
It's
But I'm
set aside.
saying, if we say we have, after we subtract this, maybe less than $300,000 left this year, but next year we have 350, the year after we have 350, we should really start to look at how do we prioritize these, so we, because otherwise we tend to do these one at a time. Like tonight, we're authorizing the LOI for the Memorial Park. And that's needed now, so we know that. We also know that Museum of Early Trades and Crafts is going to need the money, or we think they're going to need the money this year. And they're probably going to need another chunk of money, 2 or 3 years down the road based on the way they've been doing the project. So if we kind of looked at 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, we actually could get through all these projects, but we'd have to decide what the priority order is. And, it's also based on how much they're going to cost us.
Can I just make a comment, because
Sure.
I'm getting a little bit confused. We can't go out and solicit these people and say, oh, by the way, I think, I think that we should, set up the dog park. We have people coming to us saying, hey, listen, I could get money from this organization or whatever to set it up. Or I don't think it's the job of that committee to go out and solicit. I absolutely agree that, you have to have some priority set aside.
Mm-hmm.
But I look at this, and some of this list, to me, is a borough priority. When you think about it, the road milling and the overlay for the MRC, that road is a disgrace, an absolute disgrace. Something should be done about it. If we went ahead and did the remediation for that property, okay, we would in turn get more parking spaces as well. So I guess I'm looking at it in a different way than you are. I don't see that committee has the ability to go out and say, hey, listen, why don't you decide to do this? That's how it's set up, is that,
Well, I mean, ultimately, we have to decide on the priority, but I think, from my view, it would be more helpful if we started to look at this in a multi-year and started to prioritize some of these things.
There are some things that you can do that with, obviously. But there are other things that, as to Carmela's point, you're really dependent upon the organization that wants to put, forth a request. For example, the baseball field improvements, I've been asking them for their documentation. They still haven't, they've provided one quote, but they need 2 bids because it's over the threshold. And, the baseball season is fast approaching and act really quickly, but they haven't done anything. I can't.
If we had a priority list and they could see that, they have no spot until they give us the information.
Okay, I can try.
Yeah.
I can see how it
I think it would be
work.
helpful if we stop doing these one at a time.
So, yeah, and Bob and then Ben.
Yeah, maybe I could add in my 2 cents here. But way back when I first came to open space to do with Bailey Ellard, the original project, it was made clear to me that other projects were scheduled for that year or at that time slot, and that my project would have to be slotted in at a certain point when the funds were available. So, everybody's kind of saying the same thing. Projects do come out of left field, plus a lot of these projects do come from residents and subcommittees, so you can't plan everything. But to the extent that you have captured them, let's say for 2016, and you do have some question marks, you're kind of setting up like you did with me when I came to ask for open space money, that, you have a project, it's going to cost X, and you may not be able to do it right now, like I was told when I was grilled, but you may have to do it, next year. So, could it be better? Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Because unlike Bob Vogel, who manages all the capital projects in Madison, it's one point of contact. Here, you have many, many point of contacts.
Ben?
So-
Thank you. I'm not quite sure what the objective would be, to have a multi-year projection of what we would need each year. My concern when I look at this is whether we're collecting the appropriate amount of money. So if I were to look at this and see that projects that people have come forward with that sound reasonable come to a sum that's more or less what we collect, then I figure the tax rate's okay. If it were to be substantially higher and we really felt we were putting people off who had justifiable projects that would enhance Madison, and we as a group feel it's worth our residents paying a bit more for that, that would be a decision. And of course, there's always the hopeful opposite, right, which is that fewer projects come in because so many have been done, and perhaps we can lower the rate. But the timing issue is quite different than with Bob Vogel and the annual budget. So I just don't see it the same way. I think also this committee needs to be a bit more flexible because, as you mentioned, the Steve Stocker business with getting a very substantial grant was a short-term event.
Also, it's possibly, as we move forward, there are going to be properties that protect aquifer recharge areas or whatever that we do think is a benefit to save. And that doesn't occur on a priority list, really. They come up and you bring it to the council and say, look, here's why we think we should purchase this piece of property. When we started the fund in 2004, there were no funds for recreation, whether it was active or passive, for historic preservation and environmental protection. There was nothing. And so I really, really think that this has been a very big benefit to our town, and we never knew where the money was going to come from or where the property was going to come from for the fields. I mean, who would have known that we were going to buy property from the town next door to be able to create the MRC? So it moves a little bit, and it's hard to...
I think the couple of key takeaways is you've got this is a movable list. Things will come and go on this list. As you just mentioned, we've got to have the kind of almost like reserves, because when you have land purchase or things like partnerships with historic preservation like the museum or the plaza, it could be a dime out 90 cents back in from a partnership or 50 cents back in, whatever. So we're maximizing. There's the improvements or the kind of renovations. There's the establishing something new, such as a dog park. All those are shifting priorities. We've got to, it's not going to be just because the dog park gets to the table first, they get it first. We have to listen to what the priority is, and then this body makes a decision based on the other things on the list. And things have to fall in place, such as getting the LOI done, because we can't do the dog park until the LOI is done.
Or the
So,
pool.
and so there's a whole host of things that always line up. Rob?
No, I'm just concerned, my personal opinion, of course, that, we really, I think we need to, I understand Ben's point, and I understand Pat's point, but I'm loath to raise this tax. So I really think that, I really think that we need to do a little bit more planning. It seems as though we've got a lot of people who are coming forward with plans. We have the Museum of Early Trades and Crafts, we have this, we've got a lot of big projects that will chew up a lot of money, and, I think we have to be disciplined in our approach. It's expensive to live here. People look at this as a tax, and I'm not sure we should just not really just kind of take it as it comes, and if all of a sudden we have a bunch of great ideas, we'll just jack this up. I don't. I'm not sure that.
It actually it would have to go to the
I know how the
vote.
process works and everything, but still,
And I think the point was, let's say, for example, this was just the tip of the iceberg. If this body and others said it's a priority, we can't keep up with it, well, then you have the discussion, but I don't think that's what we're saying right now. It's just, we just want to make sure we...
But I'm not saying we're, but it seems like there's an awful lot of, build a gym, spend, millions of dollars to fix this, we'll spend millions of dollars to fix that.
We can't do it all.
I think we're in a transition right now, and I think this is one of the things that the committee is going to be discussing is how do we deal with lists like this?
Yeah.
And we've called in our consultant to meet with us at the next meeting to just see how other towns manage this and how they deal with it, because we are having a problem. I agree.
And this is
It's a nice problem to have,
We can't make this tax go any higher. The voters make the tax go higher.
And this is a much different list than we would have had when this fund was established 12 years ago, we know. And so, there's nothing wrong, yeah.
We wouldn't have this discussion.
Right.
I mean, there wouldn't be any Luke Miller House.
Yep. So anything else on this? So right now we have the ordinance 6 that is to appropriate the $30,000 for the LOI, which will introduction. Okay. And the
72.
and resolution 72. Thank you. Okay, roads.
Mr. Vogel will come up and talk about roads. But before, I just want to say you got your black books, you got guidelines. Get ready, budget next week. Okay, come on up. I'm going to go get some stuff to
I want to see the 30,000 foot view, of course, looking at the one.
Hello, everyone. For those of you who managed to go to the informal public hearing a little bit earlier, thank you for attending. There was a decent showing of residents from the various affected streets that we planned for the 2016 road reconstruction and mill and overlay programs. There's a lot of interest, good dialogue back and forth. No major changes, all good things. So essentially the road program request that's on the earmark for ordinances tonight have to do with the reconstruction program, the mill and overlay program, and the water utility program that deals directly with the road reconstruction work. And those are 3 ordinances. Those are number 4, number 5, and number 7. The reconstruction ask was $965,000. mill and overlay ask was $805,000, and the water ask was $270,000. What is excluded from those ordinances at this stage, and I'll do that because the inclusion list is kind of long. The mill and overlay program for $805,000 is all-inclusive, and that includes the MRC access road that we talked about earlier. That you talked about earlier. The $270,000 for water main replacements includes only road-related requests. There are well upgrades, SCADA requests, master permits, mini excavator, other water utility asks that are not part of this particular appropriation request. And for the last, the road reconstruction program, the $965,000 is all-inclusive except for Prospect Street, who has a delayed timing due to the state involvement in that project. So I believe if we're lucky and we get a positive response from the state on Prospect Street, we'll be able to bid and award that for, I would say, August through October construction. We can't do that. We really don't need to make those appropriations now. So we're asking that we delay those appropriations to when we get a better set of design plans and a better response from the state, and that Prospect Street project can then move forward later in the summer. For everything else, the benefits of going to ask for money earlier in the year have to do with the time of year. The bid prices are better if we put these out to bid in February and are able to award them in May. The timing is better for us to administer the construction projects for the 3 months of the summer. And honestly, if we get our hands on the appropriation money earlier, it gives us a lot better opportunity to actually expend those monies during a given calendar year. So a number of advantages to doing things the way we're asking. And if there's any questions about any of those programs, please feel free.
Pat? And then Ben?
So I guess I missed this, so maybe this got added at the last second. So we've now added the MRC access road to the capital budget for this year?
I see that on the mill and overlay request schedule. So that was part of our general capital ask for mill and overlay. It's kind of at the bottom.
I didn't remember seeing it before.
Is that right?
No,
I didn't add it.
It was in 2017 originally.
Okay.
And it's moved to 2016.
We had a conversation about this like a week or two ago.
Several years.
Okay, so we're crossing this off, or are we going to go back to the open space fund and ask them for the
I'm hoping we're
money?
crossing it off.
Crossing it off as far as the to-do list because it's getting done and it's being funded out of general capital and not open space. Is that what the recommendation is?
Oh, see,
Good.
so you got one year.
Good, I got more money. Thanks.
Okay. So a couple things. One, Bob and I have been working on trying to get this done sooner, whatever we're going to do, because last year we ran late and we were doing work in the fall when we really didn't want to. So I applaud Bob and his group for getting this stuff together. The one thing that I've given back to Ray and Jim is my overall concern about the total. Last year at this time, we were forecasting that we were going to be spending about $3.5 million in general capital and about $4.2 million, I think, overall. Right now, we've increased that by a significant amount, I think over $1 million over what we projected last year, including the utilities. And I still have not seen how we're going to pay for that. So I've asked that, and I assume we'll get that a week from now.
Yep.
Because that's a fairly substantial amount. And next year, we're actually projecting a $2 million bump over what we originally projected. So I'd really like to see that. Unfortunately, I'm going to vote yes tonight to introduce this. I will not be here in 2 weeks, but I will send a note in if I still have any level of concern about how we're funding these projects. Because although I do want to get the stuff done, I'm just concerned a little bit about the level and where all this money is coming from right now.
Ben?
I have a related concern, a little different. I'm okay with going out early on the roads for the reasons we've all heard before. What I'm troubled by is that if I look back to last year, and Pat alluded to this, at around this time we were reviewing a 5-year capital plan, and those numbers are approximately 50% less year over year than the numbers we've been presented with now. If I look back at what we did in terms of guidelines and strategic planning when it came to the budget, we were very concerned about getting strong, solid numbers for capital because it is a linchpin in how the budget plays out, and in turn it's fundamentally what drives our tax level. So it's as if you have one weak link in this chain, the whole chain starts to get a little shaky. And I'm very concerned that, that I'm seeing bump ups of 50% in a year. I don't know if that's because we added projects. If we did, then I'd suggest removing some others. If we underestimated that grossly, I think we ought to examine what we do to make sure that doesn't happen again. But to ask us to plan multi-year, which is an appropriate thing to ask us to do, we need good numbers. And this suggests that something happened over the last year that caused us to be looking at numbers that weren't so good. So that's my comment.
Rob, can you comment on why the numbers are so much higher?
Yeah, it's a combination of things. I would say the design drawings didn't get pulled together early enough. We had planned last year to have design drawings completed in November. This year, for a number of factors, it was delayed a couple of months, and so I didn't get real good budget numbers for you for the 2016 projects until later in the year. So the draft budget that you'd seen in November was bumped up a bit here in January. So we'll continue to work to get or refine numbers for you for next year's capital, and obviously long term we'd like to get very good numbers for you over a 5-year span. But still, we're working on 2016 numbers as we speak. So, but we do have the design drawings done and the estimates done at this stage of the game. So I'm very comfortable with the numbers that are presented here, and I think we need to redouble our efforts to get real good numbers before the November budget starts next year.
Bob?
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that no new projects have been added and nothing's been shifted around. It's more or less design documents which drove the budgeting process.
I think for the mill and overlay, obviously the CBD pavers were a big number, so that's
Okay.
$100,000 there. It's a very important project, has to be done. Sidewalks, we tried all year last year to get a good sidewalk contract and couldn't get one.
Right.
So that's another number that's carried over. And so there's a number of ads like that that have become more or less critical, and we have to get them out to bid as early as we possibly can this spring in order to not have to worry about those next year.
Okay, maybe I'll talk to you offline about doing a little variance analysis. I just have one other question, and it's a minor point, but it kind of caught my eye. It says Elmer Box Culvert collapse, and then Elmer Street drainage. Could you explain those two? Because when I see the word collapse, it's a red flag in my mind.
It's a good question. There's two projects associated with Elmer Street. One is an existing box culvert, which we had problems with out and back of Let's Paint off of Elmer Street on the north side 4 or 5 years ago. And we stabilized the culvert by rip-wrapping the edges, but we didn't replace the culvert. So replacing that culvert's going to cost some real money. It was estimated by T&M Associates 4 years ago to be a $400,000 project. So very expensive, very large culvert, kind of a critical drainage piece of infrastructure for us. So we'd love to go back and do that. The second project was a tandem project that T&M identified, which is a parallel storm sewer, which runs actually down the center of Elmer Street instead of through easements in property backyards. That project we had hoped to get county participation with if we could get a 6-foot wide culvert down the middle of Elmer Street. Now that we've investigated the design plans, it appears it's replete with conflicts in terms of existing utilities. And I don't believe we can really do much better than a 36 or 48-inch culvert, which the county will not participate in. So that means we're going to go it alone. Again, project really does have to be done. I think we should value engineer it at this stage of the game and move forward with it as quickly as we possibly can.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is there any safety concerns regarding residents, since this does run right behind businesses and homes?
There hasn't been, Bob. It's really been, it's fenced off, it's rip-wrapped, this stabilization's been made, and so I'm not concerned about resident safety or business safety at this stage of the game. It's fairly well isolated.
Okay. Pat?
Oh, so a couple other things. One is, and I gave Ray a copy. I think I copied you also when I had done a comparison of what we did last year versus this year. The other thing I keep asking for is, could we please, on the cover sheet where we have the big buckets, start to compare the percent of the capital budget in any given year that we're allocating towards a specific major area like roads, stormwater, sewer, compared to what we came out of strategic planning with, so we can start to benchmark or compare what those groups told us we should be spending versus what we actually are planning to. The second thing is, I also like to take a look at what projects that we had in last year's budget we never even authorized, which projects in last year's budget we authorized but didn't start, and which projects we authorized in last year's budget we authorized but didn't complete, because I think there's still a significant backlog. I think Jim had reported to us at one point there's how much money is currently in the capital budget fund that we're starting this year with. Because I'm a little concerned that we're really ramping up the amount of work we're doing and whether we have the capacity to actually get it all done given the way we're currently operating. So I think we need to start to take a close look at that year over year.
Thank you. Next week you'll get, I believe we'll be able to have that list for you of all the capital ordinances Bob and I were working on last week. With David Maines and others, of every capital ordinance that's currently outstanding, the percent completion, comments and alike. And then in terms of finances, back in December, you received a larger 5-year capital plan. And on page 4 of that, I remember talking about the fact that we have $1.6 million to start in the capital improvement fund. So if we're looking to fund $3 to $3.4 million, which we funded 2 years ago, we funded a little over $3 million last year. We clearly have enough to fund for this year, but we do need to start looking in the out years. We have $200,000 of project for radios for the police officers in 2008, 2017. We have a major projects, major fire trucks in the 4th and 5th year. I just, at some point in time, we need to have kind of a longer term discussion and probably take the words out of Ben's mouth, but Ben and I were talking about it today about the need to kind of smooth out some of these, whether it's the reserves or alike, but we need to have that discussion. I don't want to have too much happening on February 1st. Hopefully that's just utilities and the main municipal budget, which is plenty to talk about, but a longer term view, that's the whole purpose of doing the 5-year capital plan. And then just one thing to add on, Bob, is just now, getting the reports in from the various consultants. We received a report in on the water utility, and that was extremely helpful, and our professionals, Tom and Bob, are kind of chewing through that to kind of give us a better indication as to what we really need to be reserving in sanitary, in water, and we know in electric.
How much did we start the year off before? How much did we start last year off in the capital fund?
We started off 933.
We added 700,000 approximately.
The capital improvement fund, we started out with $933,000.
Went
We
to
had
1.6.
cancellation of improvements, which puts money back into the pot. We had budget appropriations,
Bless you.
which takes money out of the pot. We had grant funds that were received. Bless you, Mayor. When you have funds coming back in after the fact for DOT, and that's how the pluses and minuses work.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so we have the ordinance listed for introduction, that's 4, 5, and 7. And as you're looking at your workload for the year, as to reinforce what Pat just said, is not only making sure that as we're approving these projects, that we're can deliver on them, but when we have the budget presented for 2017, that we have far better numbers than what we saw 2 months ago. All right. Thank you. On to ordinances for hearings. Will the clerk please read the statements?
Ordinance is scheduled for hearing were introduced by title and passed on first reading at a regular meeting of the council held on Monday, January the 11th, 2016. All are posted and filed according to law, and copies were made available to the general public requesting same.
Call up ordinances for second reading and ask the clerk to read said ordinances by title.
Ordinance 1, 2016, ordinance of the Borough of Madison amending and supplementing Article 75-14 of the Borough Code to provide further for the waive of fees for construction to promote the renovation of existing vacant commercial structures.
I open the hearing for ordinance 1. Anyone wishing to be...
Before you open it for the public, I want to note that there is a minor change to the ordinance. It'll be found in paragraph B. The ordinance previously read, for purposes of this ordinance, comma, the structure or the unit within a structure which is being renovated shall be required to be vacant for 12 months or more prior to the permit application in order to be eligible for the waiver of fees. The revision to it, which is minor and can be done now, but the public should be able to speak on it, will read as follows. For the purpose of this ordinance, comma, the structure or the unit within a structure which is being renovated shall be required to be vacant for 6 months, comma, but not more than 12 months prior to the permit application in order to be eligible for the waiver of fees. So the difference was it was 12 months vacant, now it's 6 months vacant, but after the 12 months, that expires. So we've gone from a 12-month vacancy to a 6-month vacancy to assist owners of less than 5,000 square feet to be able to make this application for this waiver.
And that is a minor...
Minor, and that should be noted. It's already been posted, this change, publicly, and the public should be able to comment on that change, which has been posted, but I wanted to alert the public again that we've done that.
Okay, thank you. Well, so I open the hearing for ordinance 1. Anyone wishing to comment, please step up to the lectern. Seeing none, I close the hearing.
Mayor, I move ordinance 1-2016.
A second.
Any council discussion? Ben?
Yes, I would just like to comment on the change that's been made. As I understand this ordinance, and it's clear that's the intent, is to ensure, or at least to promote, that we not have vacant properties in town for extended periods of time. There's a limited amount of what we could do as to promote the leasing of properties. This struck me as a very good idea, to waive fees that has some value. The extent of the value is dependent on what the fees are covering. So it could be quite substantial if there were major renovations, and it could be really negligible if the renovations were minor. But in any case, it's money, and that's what drives a lot of decision-making. My concern was that if we keep it open for a year, that's a long period of time for a commercial property to be vacant in town. And if we're to try and promote that the vacancies are not around for that period of time, it seemed to me we needed to shorten the window. And for that reason, I came up with 6 months. It's arbitrary, but nevertheless, it's half of what we had. On the other hand, if we left it open-ended, there would be no reason to look to feel any sense of urgency whatsoever as an owner. So you could say, you know, I have a year, and I'll worry about it next year, or I've got other things to do. So I wanted to make sure that the incentive was as strong as it could be, and for that reason, I suggested a window rather than an open-ended arrangement, and a window that starts much earlier.
Okay. Any other discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Wolkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 1, 2016 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law.
Ordinance 2, 2016, ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $30,500 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for environmental engineering services at the Hartley Dodge Memorial.
I open the hearing on ordinance 2. Anyone wishing to comment, please step forward. Seeing none, I close the hearing.
Mr. Mayor, I move ordinance 2-2016.
I second the motion.
Any council discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalanello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Wolkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 2-2016 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law.
Ordinance 3, 2016, ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $41,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for a preservation plan for the east wing of the Hartley Dodge Memorial Building.
I open the hearing for ordinance 3. Anyone wishing to comment, please step forward. Seeing none, I close the hearing.
Mr. Mayor, I move ordinance 3-2016.
Second?
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalinello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Wolkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 3-2016 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. And now we're on to the second of 2 invitations for discussion, and this one you can comment on anything, but please try to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. As you step up to the lectern, state your name, your address, and write the same on the clipboard. Anyone wishing to comment, please step forward. Seeing none, I close this part of the meeting, and we move on to introduction of ordinances. Will the clerk please read the statement?
Ordinance is scheduled for first reading, have a hearing date set for February the 8th, 2016. All will be published in the Madison Eagle, posted on the bulletin board, and made available to members of the public requesting copies.
I call the ordinances for first reading and ask the Borough Clerk to read said ordinances by title.
Ordinance 4, 2016, ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $965,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for the 2016 road reconstruction projects.
Mr. Mayor, I move ordinance 4-2016.
Second?
Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalinello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Wolkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Ordinance 5, 2016, ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $805,250 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for the 2016 milling and overlay projects.
Mr. Mayor, I move ordinance 5-2016.
I second?
Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalinello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Wolkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Ordinance 6, 2016, ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $30,000 for the Municipal Open Space Trust Fund for a letter of interpretation, LOI, for Memorial Park.
Mayor, I move ordinance 6-2016.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalinello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Wolkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Ordinance 7, 2016, ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $270,000 from the Water Capital Improvement Fund for construction of water main replacements on local roads.
Mr. Mayor, I move ordinance 7-2016.
I second?
Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalinello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Wolkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Consent agenda resolutions. Will the clerk please read the statement?
Consent agenda resolutions will be enacted with a single motion. Any resolution requiring expenditure is supported by a certification of availability of funds. Any resolution requiring discussion will be removed from the consent agenda. All resolutions will be reflected in full in the minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I move resolutions 59-2016 through resolution 63-2016 and 65-2016 through 70-2016, and then finally 72-2016. Sorry?
There's 72.
No, 73.
72, right?
Only 72.
72, yep.
72, yes.
I second?
Any discussion or anything that need to be pulled?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't catch it. Is R71 still on?
No.
No, okay, so then
No.
I don't have to. recuse
No,
myself.
two are no longer on. That's one of them.
And-
And the other one is 64.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Catalinello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Wolkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
There is no unfinished business. Approval of vouchers.
Okay, Public Safety, $8,022.79. Health and Public Assistance, $1,010. Public Works and Engineering, $78,626.40. Community Affairs, $2,042.56. Finance and Borough Clerk, $3,314,041.84. And Utilities, $78,866.92. The total is $3,482,610.51.
I move the vouchers.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote?
Mr. Catalinello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Wolkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
I'd like to make under new business the following appointments, requesting council confirmation for Open Space, Recreation, Historic Preservation Advisory Committee, George Limbach as the Planning Board rep for a term through December 31st, 2016. For Sustainable Madison Advisory Committee, Amy Torchano of Anthony Drive as regular member for a term through December 31st, 2018. And for the Recreation Advisory Committee, Karen Blount for field hockey at Woodland Road for a term through December 31st, 2016.
I'll move them.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Catalinello?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Wolkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes, and with that, I move we adjourn.
Very much. Well done, everyone.
I'll be here next week on the week after.
Last week.
No, I'll be on the 8th.
Up to
Taking your wife to the meeting.
My wife is driving, she goes back to work on Monday.
Does she really?
I don't try that at all.
I was in a meeting.
No chance I wrote all the capital projects in the borough, you know that, right? Well, I meant to support, I was just showing a parallel.